Viewer discretion is advised. In the United States, the illegal drug trade is estimated to be a $100 billion a year industry. From the drug dealers, to the drug addicts, to law enforcement officials who try to put a stop to it, we take you inside the American drug game. Boston, aka Bean Town. Boston is a city where tons of money gets made on all these college kids. In Boston, there are a lot of expensive colleges. And where there's expensive colleges, there's plenty of rich kids who are looking to party and get high. You would not believe how much money some of these kids have to play with. You also have these rich kids from these other countries, and their parents, they ship them to Boston to get one of these coveted, high-priced U.S. educations. These kids, they have money getting sent to them all the time. Some of these kids, they just have unlimited accounts. Some of these kids, they'll blow through thousands of dollars in one weekend. And when all that money's gone, they just call mommy and daddy, get a couple more $1,000 sent to them. There's thousands of dollars being sent to the Boston area from all over the world. The American kids, they have tons of money sent to them as well. And it seems like some of these kids, they just go to college just to party and have a good time at the expense of their mom and dad's bank account. I don't know how some of these kids don't get kicked out of school as much as they're partying. And some of these kids, they don't just party on the weekends, they party every day of the week. I mean, if some of these parents knew what the money was going toward that they're sending these kids, it'd blow their mind. But in all honesty, I think some of these kids' parents, they know what the hell's going on. They either don't care, or maybe they think it's just some college partying phase that their kids are going through. And then the crazy part about my Boston clientele is that some of them are professors too. It's not just the students. Some of these professors, I'm sure were, one time these college party kids who got high all the time, and they just carried over until adulthood, and now they're professors and they still do the same thing. But the bulk of my business in Boston is these rich college kids. They have the cash and the resources to keep these parties going all night long. On one of these weekends, when one of their college teams have a big game, that's when I make a ton of money. The orders start getting placed early in the week. The week of a big game, my phone just starts blowing up. They party before the game, they party during the game, and then they party after the game. And these kids are just using this big game during the weekend as an excuse to party. I mean, they wouldn't give a damn if there was a game or not. They're still gonna party. And during the weekend, when their team has a big game, and if their team wins, my phone starts blowing up again. And then, the kids that don't have as much money, they'll just kind of leech onto these rich kids so they can get free weed and coke. But it doesn't matter to me, as long as somebody's paying. The main drugs that these kids want, these rich college kids, they want weed, they want coke, and they want pills. Some of these kids, they just can't seem to get enough of it. And they don't care how much they have to pay. Because these kids, they don't care. They don't care that it's their parents' money. They just blow through it, buying all the drugs they can, and they just get more money. And they know that more money is going to keep coming in. So what do they care? I had this one client. He was this rich kid from China. He calls me up one night. It's got to be about 4 o'clock in the morning. and he needed more coke because the party was still going on and they had ran out. So I go and meet with this kid, and then he tells me that he's waiting for the money to be transferred from his parents' account to his account. I mean, I was a little pissed because he's calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning and he doesn't have all the money yet. So a couple minutes go by. He's looking at his account on his phone. He sees that the money hasn't been transferred over. So he makes a phone call to China, and he gets on the phone with his mom and he starts arguing with her in Chinese. Now, if this kid's mom knew that he was standing there with his drug dealer, waiting for money to be transferred so that he can buy more drugs, there's a pretty good chance she might not have sent that money. So he hangs up the phone with his mom. We wait a couple minutes, and then just like that, the money is in his account. And that woman had no idea that she just helped to facilitate an international drug deal. The money went from China to America and into my hand. And that is just the name of the game with these rich foreign college kids who love to get high. I'm a former undercover narcotics detective in the city of Boston. My job while I was a narcotics detective, I was assigned to this anti-drug unit that was based in the Boston area. The last operation I worked on specifically targeted the area of Boston where a lot of these colleges are concentrated. My main focus was to try and find out who was supplying these college kids with these large quantities of illegal narcotics. We knew that we had some local dealers supplying some of these kids, but these dealers were low-level dealers. The unit I worked in was more interested in focusing on the mid to upper level dealers, the dealers who were not necessarily from the Boston area, but who were coming to the Boston area to sell the illegal narcotics. We started getting a lot of intel that these mid to upper level dealers were definitely not from the Boston area, and some of them were actually from out of state. We had a couple CIs who were working with us, who gave us the intel that we needed to kind of focus more on these mid and high level drug dealers. We had a situation where one of these college kids who came from a wealthy family ended up getting in a car accident, a pretty bad car accident. He was driving his expensive sports car, and he was under the influence of illegal narcotics. This kid's lucky he didn't kill someone or himself. It was a pretty serious accident, and it could have been a lot worse. The first officer on the scene of the accident observed in plain view a large quantity of powder cocaine. This kid, he comes from a wealthy family. He's never been in trouble before. He was charged with the possession of the narcotics, and he decides that he wants to work with us to try to reduce his sentence. We have this kid set up a deal with his normal supplier. We had him set up to buy a large quantity of cocaine. When it came time for the supplier to show up, he never showed. We had this kid try to set up another deal with another supplier, and then at the last minute, he decided that he didn't want to take part in the operation. This kid came from a wealthy family, so he had no problem getting a high-priced attorney. And his attorney was able to work some deal with the DA's office so that this kid didn't have to do any jail time. Unfortunately, that was a problem we kept running into, dealing with these rich college kids. who have the money and the resources to get themselves out of trouble when you get in a jam. We arrested a lot of these privileged, rich kids who were in college in the Boston area and whose parents were very well known, very well connected people. We had kids of celebrities, kids of politicians. We had foreign kids whose parents were working in high levels of government in foreign countries. And these kids would make a phone call, and a few phone calls would be made by their parents, and next thing you know, these kids are walking free. It could be frustrating at times, but that's the type of people we were dealing with. It could be very, very frustrating at times because you saw how these wealthy kids just got away with all kinds of bad behavior. And I truly believe that some of these colleges, they know what these kids are up to. There's no doubt that these colleges know that some of these kids are wrapped up in this illegal narcotics activity. But when these kids' parents are writing checks to these colleges to help build a new facility or whatever it is, these colleges, they tend to look the other way. It almost seemed like if your parents had the type of power and money to make these things go away, it was just like your parents could write a check and make it all disappear. If your dad could write a big enough check, you had a free pass to almost do whatever you want.
I was a student at one of these prestigious colleges in the Boston area. I started using drugs when I was in high school, and it just carried over into college and started to pick up even more. In college, it just got really bad. A lot of it was, I was on my own for the first time, living in a dorm, and I didn't have my parents breathing down my neck. I come from a wealthy family, so getting money for drugs was never a problem. And my parents were more interested in me going to some fancy college than they were making sure that I didn't become a drug addict. So that's what ended up happening. I was partying all the time. I was getting out of control. And I was never going to class. The people that were around me, they were my pretend or fake friends. I knew they weren't really my friends. They were only hanging around me because I had the money to get the party going. I was able to always get money to buy the drugs and the alcohol. So it kept those type of people around, those, leeches or people who were just, looking for a free pass or a free ride. In the beginning, I was able to handle it, but then as time goes on, I just got pulled into it so deep. And I knew in the back of my mind that the people I kept around me, they were just playing me for a fool. They didn't care about my well-being. As long as I had the money to buy more drugs and alcohol and to keep the party going, they didn't care about me or my well-being. But even though I knew that these people were just using me and they weren't really my friends, I guess I just liked having them around. So I guess, I'm partly to blame for keeping these type of people around. These type of people that, would never tell me, when it was too much or when I was going over the line. It was like, the more crazy things got, the better. It sounds crazy to hear me talk about it now, but, it was one of those things where when it all came crashing down, none of those people were around. It's like everything just stopped and everybody went away. My drug problem came to a screeching halt when I got arrested. I got so high one night, I just started running around campus, taking my clothes off and screaming and yelling. So I got arrested, and the police they check my pocket and they see that I had a couple bags of drugs in my pocket. They ended up searching my dorm room and they found a lot more drugs. I ended up getting kicked out of school and almost went to prison. After that, I went to rehab, and then after rehab, I ended up going back to college, but a college that was closer to home, where I could live at home and I guess kind of be monitored by my parents. Thankfully, everything is back on track now, but it got to a point where things just got way out of control. I should have gotten help before I got to that point, but when you're wrapped up in that, and that party life, it pulls you in. You don't realize how bad things are because you're in the middle of it, and you think you're just having a good time when you're really on the verge of destroying your entire life. These good times, or what I thought were good times, almost completely destroyed everything.
The rich college kids from the US, they're even more out of control, and they tend to have a lot more cash on them. One of my clients, one weekend, he needed more product and called me up to kind of get things moving. But he told me he had to drive out of state to go get more cash from his parents. He calls me up when he's coming back into the state, and we set up the deal and made it happen. It just blows my mind to see how these kids just blow through this cash. I mean, they just spend money like it's just going to keep coming in. And it does. It seems like there's no end to some of these kids, these rich college kids, as to how much money they can get. They just make a phone call, or they take a trip out of state, and they got the money just like that. When college in Boston is in session, the money just comes pouring my way.